Our job begins where most advisors stop. Saving money is great, but how do you spend it without risk in retirement? Welcome to Every Day is Saturday with Brad Gatto and Matt Stahl, partners and private wealth managers at Fiat Wealth Management. In this podcast, we aim to broaden your knowledge about the financial world we live in today and make the boring and complex financial decisions fun, informative, and educational. Join us on this journey where Brad and Matt will explore different strategies on how to spend your money without guilt and have peace of mind knowing you are spending it the optimal way in retirement.
Welcome to Every Day is Saturday. I'm Matt Stahl, partner at Fiat Wealth Management. And today we're going to be shifting gears a bit and hearing from someone outside of Fiat and outside of our industry in general. And it's someone that we see as an inspiration that's really living the Every Day is Saturday lifestyle. So I'd like to welcome Gavin Kaysen. And just a quick background on Gavin. He's an award-winning chef and he's the founder of Soigné Hospitality Group here in Minneapolis. He's known for his group of restaurants and also just his leadership in the culinary profession in general. So a handful of his restaurants include Spoon and Stable, was a 2015 James Beard Award finalist for Best New Restaurant, Demi, which was ranked number 3 on the Robb Report's list of 10 best restaurants in North America, and Bellecour Bakery. In addition to his restaurants, Gavin is also very involved in the activist area within the hospitality group, and he's the co-founder of Heart of the House Foundation, a nonprofit that was started during the pandemic to sustain the growth, health, and prosperity of the Soigné Hospitality Group. He's a proud recipient of 2 James Beard Awards, the Rising Star Chef of the Year in 2008 and the Best Chef in the Midwest in 2018. So as you can hear, Gavin has quite the extensive list of accommodations coming into this. Gavin, anything I missed?
I think that's pretty good.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've been an admirer of what you do for a long time, so I'm super excited. And I just thank you for coming in today. I want to start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So tell us about, where'd you grow up? What was that like? Just kick it off from the beginning.
Yeah, so I was born in Los Angeles actually, but I grew up here in Minnesota. I grew up in Bloomington, and I I fell into cooking with my grandmother first. So at the age of 7, I used to bake Christmas cookies with her. And it was remarkable to think that something so simple could make people so happy. And it wasn't a lot of ingredients. It wasn't a lot of time. And I remember that moment actually when I was that age, when my brother and my cousins came into the house, and to see them smile and get happy over something that we crafted, it really struck a chord with me. And later on in life, when I started to cook more and more, I really started to realize that the power of the food was really the power of hospitality, and to be able to give back to people in a way that was meaningful but genuine is what always enticed me and kept me part of this profession. So I went from baking Christmas cookies to eventually going to culinary school at New England Culinary Institute in Vermont. And then I went from there to Napa Valley, and I did an internship at Domaine Chandon in Napa Valley. Then I went back to school to finish. My second internship was at Auberge de Lavaux in Switzerland. And then I moved to London and worked for, again, a Marco Pierre White. And Marco was the chef who trained Gordon Ramsay, who was much more famous than Marco. Marco doesn't like that. And then I went from London to San Diego to New York City, where I worked for Danielle Boulud for many, many years, and then moved back home to open up my own restaurant. So, out of all of the places from a living perspective, Switzerland was remarkable. A lot of value in living in life and sort of what that means. It gave me a lot of time to figure out who I was as a human being and where I wanted to be in my life later on. New York was my PhD in this business. I mean, it taught me so much and continues to teach me so much about what it is that I want to do and how I can get there. But there's something to be said for that drive in New York City that you have to have constantly, consistently, every single day. Otherwise, there's a lot of people in line that are ready to take that from you.
Yeah. Awesome. So is there some sort of connection to you working at Subway at some point, or a sub shop?
Subway, I was 15. I worked at a Subway, and I was a certified sandwich artist. It's funny. I actually worked at a TCBY yogurt as well, but I got fired from TCBY yogurt because I brought the package of yogurt home in its raw form, and I didn't like the flavor. So I changed the recipe, and then I brought it back to my manager, and then I churned the ice cream or the yogurt in the machine, and I had him taste it. And he thought it was delicious, but he found out that I brought the bag home, and he considered that theft. And so he fired me, even though I brought it back. But yeah, I went in Subway. I worked at a Subway when I was 15 years old and 16, and it was a bunch of my buddies in high school. And you know, what's funny about that experience is I would memorize what people would order, because people that work in office or people that have like jobs that are very routine tend to do the same thing every day. And they tend to not make decisions on things that don't impact them too much, such as what is their lunch order. And when you talk to a lot of executives, they typically they eat the same breakfast every single day, or they eat the same or very similar lunch every single day. Because if you're making a million decisions, those are two that you can just wipe out. And what I recognized early on is that these people would come in, they get the same sandwich every day. So I just made a chart, which was my key. And it was like, okay, if Bill would come in, he'd get the 6-inch roast beef sandwich on wheat, everything but mustard and jalapenos. If Karen would come in, she would get, if Jill would come in, she would get, and I would recognize who they were. And we would do so many more people. And we had the highest grossing Subway for revenue, because nobody would have to wait in line. And then the line got longer because people wanted to be able to do that. There was a guy next door named George Serra, who lives here in Minnesota, who opened up a fast casual pasta restaurant called Pasta Time. And George would come in every Saturday to order a 4-inch tuna fish sandwich on a round bun, go through the whole charade of having me make it. He'd pay for it. He'd walk out the door and he'd throw it in the trash every Saturday. And after, I think, 4 weeks, I finally had the courage to ask him, like, what's your deal?
Yeah.
And he just said, I'm watching you cook. You have good hands. I think you should actually cook for a living. And I didn't even know what that meant. I had no idea at that point. And I said, okay. He gave me, I think, $1 more an hour. And so I quit Subway and moved next door to work at Pasta Time. And that's where I really started to have a lot of fun with cooking. And George taught me a lot about, not necessarily the fundamentals. He actually taught me a lot about art. He was a great artist. And later on in my life, when I was 20, I think I was 25. So this was 10 years after, I was on the cover of a magazine called Chef Magazine. And I called George because, of course, I was proud that it was my first cover. And I sent him 5 or 6 copies. 6 months later, the editor called me up and said, we're trying to get in touch with George. We're going to do a story on him. I said, oh, great. Tell me, what's the story about? We confirmed that they have the right contact information, phone number, email, et cetera. And so I was curious what the story was. And the story was actually that George had founded that magazine and then sold it. And so they were doing like a 25-year recap of how that magazine was founded. I'm like, he founded the magazine? Huh. And I called George. I said, George, you were the founder of Chef Magazine. When I was on the cover, you never told me ever. And he's like, it wasn't about me telling you. He's like, and we've never talked about it since. That's just crazy. So crazy. Yeah. Funny how the universe works.
So for those of you that are from around the Twin Cities, one thing that jumps out at me, well, you brought up the hospitality piece of all this.
Yeah.
So yes, there's the food, but it's the experience itself. And if you've been to one of these restaurants, you'll know that that's something that's super important to you. So tell us, at what point was it Subway when that hit you? At what point did you realize that there's more to the formula than just the food?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that I probably started to see it a lot in Switzerland. I was 21 when I moved there. I was a sponge. I was willing and ready to take on everything. And the reason I took that job actually was because my dad was there for business a lot. And when he would come back home, I would ask him, where did he eat? And he would say the same place, Auberge de Lavaux. And I'd say, well, what did you order? And he says, I don't know what I ordered, or I don't know what we ate because we never order. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the chef just comes out and talks to us and gets to know us. And then they just cook for us. And I was so intrigued by that I wanted to go work there. Well, the reality of what he actually did is that there was 4 tasting menus on the menu, but nobody ever saw a menu unless they asked to it. And the menus were named after the price. So it was menu 79, 99, 109, 129. And that's how we called it out in the kitchen. So you'd say, okay, 4 menus, 79. And then we'd all know that was a 3-course menu or a 4-course or 5-course or 7-course. But what he did, what was remarkable, is that he made every guest feel as though he was cooking only for them. Yep. And so that really inspired me to think to myself, like, he's not duping anybody. If they want to see the menu, he has it. But what he's trying to give them is sort of this experience of like, you're with us now, and I think what often happens is that in our world, people think restaurants are a very rateable experience, right?
Yep.
They're built that way. That's why Yelp and TripAdvisor and OpenTable and all these places, after you eat with us, they send you an email and say, rate us. Well, the word restaurant comes from the word restoration, or to be restored. So when you go out to eat, you should actually find restoration through that experience and not find it rateable. If you're finding it rateable, you're actually not really presently there in the experience. And so, that's our focus all the time when we think about hospitality, is like, how do you give these people restoration by way of this experience? And I mean, by no means are we perfect at it. It happens often where you get a complaint. And when I read the complaints, I don't think to myself, this is what we did wrong, or I get mad or I get frustrated. I actually read the complaint and think to myself, was that person there for restoration, or was that person not there for that? And if they're not, which you can actually read in between the lines of a complaint, you realize that you probably wouldn't have been able to achieve success with them to begin with. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so you sort of move on from that experience. But there's always these learning lessons. I mean, I watch people for a living. I watch the way that they eat. I watch the way that they converse. I watch how they are with their guests at the table. You watch if it's a first date or a 25-year marriage. You watch it all and you see it all. And it's remarkable. And the power of hospitality can bring people together. And the most beautiful experiences I've ever had are the people I'm with, not the food I'm eating.
Yeah, that's amazing. So actually, right before we started recording, I was just talking to someone else at Fiat about Demi, one of the restaurants we mentioned earlier. And it was like a time warp.
Yeah.
So I think we were there for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And talk about restoration. We walked out of there and the food was amazing.
Yeah.
But it was just the experience was it. So
Demi's a special restaurant. I mean, it's 20 seats, it's a very small space. There's no menu that we tell you of. And the reason we don't tell you that there's a menu is very specific. We don't want you to ever rate the experience before you get to it. And we don't tell you how many courses, because the worst thing that can happen is if I tell you it's 10 courses, intuitively, you'll start counting.
Yep.
And then you're counting down and you're saying, well, we have 3 left. And then once you get to that point, you actually end up start valuing the experience. And you start to say like, well, was it worth these 10 courses if I only have 3 left? Am I full? Am I not full? And I'd rather just keep people on this mystery ride.
Yeah, cool. So what made you come back to Minnesota?
So growing up here sort of was a bit of a boomerang effect, I guess, in a way. I never anticipated I'd move back, to be honest with you. I mean, I was very happy in New York City. My job was, I was a partner and director of culinary operations for the brand of Café Beloud. So I was in charge of one in New York City, West Palm Beach, and one in Toronto, Canada. My life was a lot of traveling, but I sort of hit the ceiling in terms of entrepreneurship. I really always knew that I wanted to do this and I wanted to create my own. So I looked at spaces in New York City, I looked at spaces in Southern California, and I looked at spaces in Minneapolis. And Spoon and Sable was the space that just popped first. And everything about the space just felt right. And so I took it. And that's really the reason why. I mean, there was not a lot of my life has always been, I try to just be as present as I can possibly be. I mean, when my wife and I moved from London to San Diego, no joke, we put a map up of the United States and we threw darts. And one hit San Diego, one hit Atlanta, Georgia. And we visited both places. Yeah. And we decided San Diego was a better fit for us. So we moved there. It wasn't, where do we want to live? It had nothing to do with school or job or anything. It was just like, where do you want to go?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm happy to have been able to move back, and it's been a great experience to be back home. And my parents are here so they can be close to my kids, their grandkids, which is also really important.
Awesome. And how many kids do you have?
2 boys, 9 and 12.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So
yeah,
they keep
wild.
you busy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So Gavin was just showing me some of the meals he's cooking for his boys this week. And I don't want to show that to my kids. They're gonna feel bad about what they're getting. So you've had a ton of success, obviously. Last year was a challenge for all of us,
Crazy.
But my gosh, like the challenge and that world that you're in just was immense. So take us through that whole year. I experienced one piece of that. So tell us about what was going on through your head. And
it was crazy. March 15th was the day we shut down all the restaurants. I was at Bellecour in the morning out here in Wayzata, which has since closed. And then we moved the bakery down to the North Loop. But I was having brunch at Bellecour with a friend of mine, and we went for a long walk to sort of plot the day. I must have gotten to Bellecour about 8:30 that morning. And I think I got home that night about 2:30 or 3 in the morning.
Gosh.
I'd sent out the company-wide email to everybody at about 11:30 that night saying that we were going to close permanently. We knew that all of the governor's announcements were coming the next day. We were privy to all that information. We have another company that cooks for the Timberwolves, the Lynx, and the Wild. And so we had a lot of good information from our NBA friends and our NHL friends. But, closing at first, it's so interesting because I didn't anticipate, like nobody did, but we didn't anticipate that it would be short. We figured it would be a longer, my anticipation was 3 months. And so we built spreadsheets off of 3 months of being closed. And then you just sort of had to keep pushing it out. We created the nonprofit organization, which you mentioned, called Heart of the House, 5 days after closing. And why that was really important to me was creating a 501c3, not doing a GoFundMe or anything that was, not tax-free based. As you know, you'll get higher donors as a result when there's a tax benefit. And I think there's also legitimacy to it. That organization has given away over $275,000 to our employees. Cool. And we've raised more than that. And now we're in a transition phase with that foundation. We will keep it. We just want to now decide where does that live within our organization. But watching the restaurant profession just get chopped at the knees was crazy. I mean, I always say to people, it was COVID was the kryptonite for us. It took away our one superpower of taking care of people, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it through to-go boxes. And listen, locally in Minnesota, everybody did as best as they could to support as many of us as they could. And a lot of places shut down as a result of COVID. I mean, I can tell you, I didn't close Bellecour because of COVID. I closed Bellecour because I knew the amount of time it would take for me to reopen that space. And I knew my time was would be of more benefit to keeping Spoon and Sable and Demi operating and then moving the bakery and starting to make these transitions. It's hard to tell somebody that when they've spent their wedding or anniversary or birthday or every Friday night with you. Right. It's a personal experience to them, and I totally get that. We had to remove ourselves from that personal side of things and say, what is the business and what does it need? What's interesting is that we're all starting to come back now. The dining rooms are open 100%. You can have outdoor space, which is great. There's a lot of things that the city and the state helped us with, which they're retracting a little bit of now. So we're having to kind of go back to get more help. But the reality is that we're now running into a totally new wave of issues. Two things. One is staffing. It's really hard to find people to work. And I do not blame that on the stimulus checks. A lot of people want to think that it's just that. I think people reorganize their lives. I think people took a step back and said, do I really want to cook 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day? Yeah. What is the value of what I'm doing? We were fortunate that we have a 401k program at our company. We have full healthcare benefits at our company. We kept all of that for our team through COVID. None of that went away if you stayed with us. And I think that was important for people to recognize that if you are going to go back into this profession, find a company that you're working for that will also work for you when the times get as tough as they got during COVID, because I've never seen it like that in my life, and I hope to never see it again. But as it comes back, I think the other thing that we're fighting is supply chain issues. Yep. The consumer hasn't felt it just yet. They will with food prices. To give you an idea, on an average annual basis of inflation for food costs, it goes up 0.8% every year. I think we're at 4% now. Oh my gosh. So, at the grocery store, very simply put, you'll see the change. Yeah. Once consumers start to see those changes, if you order a couch for your house today in July or June, whatever we're in, that likely will not get to you until next February. When the guests start to see that at home and in their own life, they'll understand that we're dealing with that, but tenfold. So it's been, I have a friend who has a company and he trucks frozen food around, the country. On average, a semi-trailer costs him like $3,000 to ship. It's $7,000. Oh my gosh. It's over double. Yeah. So those prices just have to spill down. And so, there was, I was reading a quote this morning about somebody, I can't remember what it was in total, because it was a very long quote, but effectively the gist of it is you have to find ways to adapt and change as business is moving forward. If you stay exactly the same, you'll just never really get any better. And COVID taught us that, and in our profession, restaurants have always been very behind on tech. We're not a tech-based group, right? We built an entire company called GK at Home, which is virtual cooking demos, that is 100% tech-based. Yep. And it has filled a gap and it has filled a bucket for our company, both from a soulful perspective and a financial perspective, that we quite frankly can't see go away for quite some time right now. And we never would have figured that out had we not been innovative and open to what that looked like throughout COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. So your decision to when you made that tough decision to shut down Bellecour,
Yeah.
you said we were looking at spreadsheets. That seems to be a pretty unique thing for a chef who's in a real creative type of role.
Yeah.
That also gets involved in the number side of things.
Yeah.
Has that just always been something that you've had those two brains at the same time? Or
I guess, yeah, I've never really recognized it, but I've always been really excited about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I love the challenge of anything, and making money in a restaurant is very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the challenge.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to be able to look at these spreadsheets and say to yourself, where are we losing and where are we gaining? I was really fortunate when I worked in New York City. Danielle, my old boss, his CFO was a guy named Marcel Derone. And Marcel was a genius. He is a genius. And I didn't know how to read the spreadsheet the way that I should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember sitting down with him hours on end and just understanding, like, what are the gaps? How do you look at a spreadsheet of numbers, a P&L? And he would just go through it and circle what was right and what was wrong. And until I really started to digest what that information looked like and felt like. And then when you make those small changes based off of this P&L into real life, and then you see what that means at the end result, it's very satisfying. And I'm so goal orientated. So it's really gratifying to be able to achieve those goals. So yeah, we've been staring at a lot of P&Ls and a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah,
This year has been all about that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But, Bellecour was that. I mean, it was like looking at it and just saying to ourselves, I mean, listen, that restaurant was profitable every single month we were ever open. What's hard about our business is that we're very public. And so even though we're not publicly traded, we're a very public company, and we need to be public facing because a guest wants to know who they are supporting. And I hear that, and I'm totally into that, And so when you're a public space, what happens is you walk into a restaurant that's busy, and the first thing people usually say is, this place is printing money. And that's a really common response, right? Because they're always busy, or I can never get a reservation at Spoon and Sable or Demi. They must be making a boatload of money. Well, the back end, every time I get an email or a letter from the trash company that says your trash is going to go up X% because metal is more expensive, I want to take pictures of all of those and say, this is the back end of what's printing money, and it's not printing it. And I'm not saying that as feel bad for me. What I'm saying is all of that is part of our equation of when we're building that experience for the guest. But at 5 p.m. when those doors open, it's theater.
Yeah.
And there's a show that goes to that. And being a part of what that show looks like, I see my responsibility as carrying the weight of building everybody ready for that show. And when the show starts, we have to be ready for it. And so I spent a lot of my daytime hours figuring that out. And we have a remarkable team of people that I'm lucky to surround myself by that help me figure that out every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have you learned in building this team? So obviously you don't do this all on your own.
No.
So what are some of the biggest lessons you've taken away from that?
I think the biggest thing is really just checking in with people. So we have a director of hospitality, a director of operations, a CFO, director of accounting, all these things, right? But really what it comes down to is listening to what it is that person is trying to bring to the company, and then how that works with the company as well. I'm not a leader who cares what hours people work. We have an office, it's HQ, a headquarters. I don't care if they come in at 8 a.m. or 2 p.m. It doesn't bother me at all. All I care is that they know what their job is and that they get it done. And we spend a lot of time talking to each other about this stuff. And we spend a lot of time caring for one another, because what's remarkable about our profession is that at Spoon, we'll cook for 1,500 people a week. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say I know personally 50 of those people.
Yeah.
Let's say the cook at Spoon knows 0. We spend more energy taking care of 1,500 people we do not know versus the person sitting or standing to the left and the right of us every single day.
Yeah.
And we try to make sure that we are telling and reminding ourselves that that is important, that we have to care for one another. We have to show each other that same sense of hospitality. And it's just this constant evolving, thing that just keeps growing. And you see days when it gets really, really hard, and you see days where everything clicks and it snaps and it's amazing and beautiful. and you just got to kind of keep rolling with it. So
Yeah.
the team of people we have is remarkable.
Yeah. So what are some of the good things that came out of last year that you think are going to stick, or things that maybe should have changed in the restaurant industry that may stick moving forward?
So I think I think the innovation will stick. I think people focusing on writing about exploring different cultures and diversities in food, cuisine, and people in our community that have been cooking really beautiful food that just normally you would never go and try.
Yeah.
I think that will stick, and I hope it sticks. You're seeing a lot of places out there do hospitality charges, which is effectively removing the tip. I think a portion of that will stick, if not all of it.
Yep.
It is and I completely empathize with the guest, it is an incredibly confusing thing to understand. And the reason is because the law is very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go out to eat and you see on your bill, I will use Spoon and Stable as an example. Spoon and Stable does a 21% hospitality charge on your bill. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you on the bottom of the receipt, it says there's a 21% hospitality charge, and this is not a gratuity for the direct service employee. That is the law telling we have to write that by law. So then the guest gets confused because they're like, well, how much do they get?
Yeah.
And do I tip the person? Well, the one thing that's tough is that when you tip somebody, by law in our state, it can either go directly to that person or they can share it with whomever they want to share it with. The company gets a tip credit for that. Okay. A tax credit, excuse me.
Okay.
So as an owner, I'm actually given an incentive by the state for our taxes to basically pay our employees in an unequal fashion. And so the disparity of pay between a cook and a server might be 50 feet apart from one another, but I'm benefited for that. By doing a hospitality charge, I lose that benefit completely, but I can now pay the team a more livable, equitable wage as a result.
Got it. Okay.
So we split ours up about 74% of that 20. So if you take the 21% and put it in a 100% pie chart, 74% of that goes to the front, to the dining and service team. 15% goes to the house, which pays FICA taxes and other related items. And the remaining 12, 13% goes to the kitchen team. So everybody gets to, basically, the busier we are, everybody gets paid more money. I think that will stick. I just think it's hard for people to fully grasp. We are a tip-based culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we go out to eat, we think to ourselves, I need to tip this person for the job that they did. All of that is true, except there's 90% of the people behind the scenes that also did the job.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take back that control and share that amongst our team in a more equitable way. So you take that 15% that the house keeps, if that pays taxes, and let's say at the end there's 5% profit left, we'll just take that money and either put it back into our foundation, or we'll have employee appreciation parties, or we'll do something that ends up giving back to the team.
Cool.
So I hope that sticks longer, but it's been a process to try to explain that to people. And I totally understand why.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
You know, we're so used to just tipping.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
yeah. All right. You have a lot going on. So
it's crazy, man.
Like what? So I've GK at home. You mentioned that earlier. So that happens in the evening. You obviously have stuff going on. Tell us, what's a day in the life look like, or a week in the life?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I go, like I mentioned to you before we jumped on this. I mean, I really schedule day by day. I mean, my typical day is I get up about 5:30 or 6 in the morning. I have breakfast. I make breakfast for my kids, and then I go to the gym for an hour and a half. And then I go from there to work. I usually get to work by 9:30 or 10, between 9 and 10, I should say. My day is typically filled with meetings, calls, media things, et cetera, et cetera. And then my public life starts at 5 p.m. So then service starts at 5 p.m. If it's a Monday and Tuesday, then I'm at Spoon the whole time. If it's a Wednesday through the rest of the week, I split between Demi and Spoon, and I can walk between them all. So the days sometimes get filled with tastings. Then I usually eat dinner at like 6:30 or 7 at Spoon in the office, give my voice a break, give my body a break a little bit. And then I go back and out on the floor and cook with the team and talk to the guests. And I try to get home between 9:30 and 10:30. And then I go to bed pretty quickly. I'm pretty disciplined about getting good sleep.
Yeah.
And I always have been. When I worked in London, my hours were 6 a.m. till 1 a.m. And so if I didn't go to sleep right away, I wouldn't get anything more than like 3.5 hours of sleep. So I learned to be disciplined quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the life is, it's crazy. But you know, what's funny is I'm 42 years old. I've been cooking since I was 15. I've been given the title of chef since I was 24, I still have a hard time feeling guilt-free leaving the restaurant at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Yep.
Like if my son has a baseball game, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to his game. I'll go to the game. And I still feel like, I'm cheating on everybody by being there. And I don't think that'll ever go away. And I guess I've stopped fighting it now, but it is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons we asked. So the name of our show is Every Day is Saturday. We want to inspire people to, chase their dreams and see every day as an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And you're obviously chasing your dream.
Yeah.
You're living it every day.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're peeling yourself away from there,
Yeah.
just speaks volumes about. That's an inspiration. That's what we want to show everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think often we get, if you really, for me, like as I thought through the last year and a half of COVID gave us all time back.
Yep.
And for some people that was good. And for some people it was transformative. And for some people it was awful. Because when you have time back on your own side, you actually have to face what is in front of you, and it's you. And for some people that was terrifying. But from my perspective, I gave my time away so easily and I didn't think much about it. And as I've taken a step back from that time, I've found ways now to carve out little times of my day, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just to have my own time. And I think often I got wrapped up into, and we often get wrapped up in this idea of like, if I'm going to have time, I need hours. I need a bike ride. I need a trip. I need vacation. And everything we're saying is like these really big goal things that we need,
right.
But you don't need that. You might need 3 5-minute sessions a day just to get back what you need. And start with that. Start with 1 5-minute session where you just sit in a room by yourself and it's quiet.
Yeah.
And see how that feels. And if it's terrifying, do it again.
Yeah.
And you end up like recalibrating your mind a little bit, and sort of like rerouting your brain and saying like, this is where I want to go and this is how I want to get there. There's no doubt that goals and being focused on those goals are really important to me. And I write them down and I say them out loud and I try to manifest them all the time. But I do the same for like taking a step back and saying, okay, now just shut it down for the day.
Right.
And then come back.
Yeah. So I have to ask,
yeah,
what was for breakfast this morning?
What did I make? I did scrambled eggs with chicken, spinach, and goat cheese.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was good. I actually usually don't change. It's usually 2 egg whites, 1 whole egg. But today I did it scrambled with spinach and chicken.
Nice.
I think it was probably because of what I had. I did a lot of cooking yesterday for my wife for like these prep meals. I did like a little North African rub on a chicken. So I roasted a whole chicken for her. I made ratatouille. I roasted sweet potatoes. I roasted beets. I braised some bok choy. I made pork lettuce wraps. So I did all that yesterday in like an hour and a half.
Nice.
Most people take like them all day. It took me an hour and a half. And then I chilled it all down and now she's got lunch and dinner for the next couple
That's
days.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You didn't make extras, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you do for fun?
A lot of it's because the boys are 9 and 12. They're very active in sports. So we're out playing baseball or soccer or football or doing something like that, which is a lot of fun. And they love it and I love it. My parents have a pool, so we'll go swimming when it's nice out in the summer. If it's wintertime, we'll go ice skating. My youngest loves hockey, so we skate a lot on the ice, which is great. And then, getting like little trips out, 1 or 2 day trips somewhere to go eat somewhere. I love that. It's beautiful. I'm going to go to San Diego in a couple of days to go visit a friend of mine who was a mentee who opened up a restaurant. So I'm going to go visit him, which I'm really excited to see.
Yeah. Nice. So if you're not going to eat at your own restaurant, where are you going?
In Minneapolis.
Yeah.
It's a good question. So let me think. Where have I eaten lately? Petite Lion. I had a great meal at Petite Lion, which was delicious. I love Young Joni. I haven't been back since they've opened, but I love her food. She does a good job there. There's a new restaurant called Muriel, which is opening in St. Paul that I'm excited to try out. The chef, she used to be the chef at Corner Table.
Okay, cool.
And she's opening a restaurant there. Otherwise, sometimes I'll go, World Street Kitchen is like one of my favorite cash spots to go at. Just grab something and sit out on a picnic table and eat, which is just delicious. And then they've got the ice cream bar next door, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the thing for me is like when I go out to eat, I tend to eat at a lot of the same places. I had a great meal at Stahl. Have you been to that restaurant in St. Paul? It was really good. It was a great meal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. St. Paul's a long ways away.
I know. I hear it. Especially if you're out here. Yeah. It's funny. I don't come back out to Wayzata much because I'm downtown all the time. So now I actually have not been off of this exit since I closed Bellecour.
Really?
Yeah. Because there's no reason for me to come out here right now.
Yeah.
So
And you have a new project coming up soon, correct?
we do. Yeah. So we're opening a new restaurant inside of the Four Seasons Hotel.
Cool.
So that's on Hennepin in Washington. So near about 3 blocks from Spoon and Stable. They're erecting the building right now. It's going to be 37 floors. 14 of the floors are office. 8 of the floors are hotel, which is 221 rooms. And then there'll be 34 private residents on top of that. So we're building a restaurant and bar lounge inside of there and also a cafe.
Awesome.
So we're probably I think we'll probably open next May or June.
Awesome.
We'll see. Construction.
Nice.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All we just talked about before might push that back. Further.
And if it does, it does. But we're excited about the space. We're sort of dreaming about it right now. We're dreaming about the name and what we want the name to be and what we want the food to look like and taste like and feel like. This is the fun part of the phase because you get in all the plate samples and glasses and you just start to pick out all these really great things. But the design of the restaurant is beautiful. I'm excited about where it is geographically in downtown. I think there is a lot of, rightly so, fear of people going downtown because of everything that's happened in the last year and a half. But, where I am at Spoon and Stable and Demi and Bellecour Bakery, it's just a beautiful space. It's a neighborhood. And I see people walking around all night long and all day long. And where this is going to be is right on that corner near us. So I'm excited to see it grow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's actually the first time we spent time in Minneapolis was for my wife's 40th birthday, which we celebrated at Spoon and stayed in that neighborhood. So
that's awesome.
Gavin, any questions we didn't ask you that you think we should have, or
I don't think so. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, like we said, you're an inspiration. That's why I invited you. You're a local hero of ours. We love your food.
Thanks.
We love what you've created. So we thank you for being on. And so my co-host Brad Gatto may not be here today, but he will be back. And when he does, it will be Saturday again, because every day is Saturday.
Thank you for listening to Every Day is Saturday. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management or Foundation's investment advisors. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.